What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm going to be starting a brand new marathon of reviews covering the heavily sighed-upon franchise that, in my opinion, started off relatively strong, albeit a little bit flawed. It's Transformers. Transformers centers on Sam Witwicky, played by Shia Labeouf, when he finds himself smack dab in the middle of an alien invasion as two robotic forces, the Autobots and Decepticons, race and fight each other on a journey to find the Allspark, a powerful cube that can turn anything electronic into a living robotic creature. And the altruistic Optimus Prime is prepared to lead a suicide mission to destroy the Allspark in order to bring peace to the Earth and all its inhabitants. It's been nearly 15 years since the first Transformers film was released, and I remember watching it for the first time in theater all those years ago and just being floored and surprised that you could make such an explosive film based entirely off of a toy line. But when I first saw it, I thought it was downright epic. There's still a lot about this film that I love, but I also have seen more and more flaws with it every time that I rewatch it. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, let's talk about some of the best things about this movie. First and foremost, Shia LaBeouf. He's had quite a career and life, but this was his stage of life that I absolutely loved him in. People were even claiming that this nerdy kid from the Even Stevens show would eventually become the next Tom Cruise, and I believed them. Here we are, nearly 15 years later, Shia LaBeouf has gotten weirder and weirder, while Tom Cruise is still the next Tom Cruise. Anyway, Shia is great in this film, as he can really balance extreme action and comedy really well. He is easily the heart and soul of this movie, and it helps to prove that this initial trilogy, and really this movie specifically, may be the best of the best because of character development alone. From recent memory, Shia has been the most charismatic and real character the franchise has ever had. You like him. I mean, unless you include the Bumblebee movie, then you might have some competition for relatable characters. And then you have to look at the Transformers themselves and these crazy transformations that they go through. It's beautiful. All these years later, and the graphics hold up, as does the action. It's a little bit over the top already, not as bad as the later films, but it's still pretty saturated with action. And for what it's worth, the action is good. You sense threat with the Decepticons. You don't want to see the Autobots die, whether through getting killed by Decepticons or by the destruction of the Allspark. And the freaking voices of these robots, particularly with Optimus Prime, Megatron, and Bumblebee. I love it. I do. Peter Cullen's voice as Optimus is bone-chilling. Always has been, and I love it. And you can't go wrong with Hugo Weaving in basically anything. And finally, with the positives, the music. This is probably my favorite soundtrack in the series. I found myself humming along to the score itself, and obviously the last song. I mean, I miss the Linkin Park credit lead-ups. I do. It made the entire movie, whether you liked it or not, worth watching. I personally remember sneaking into the theater just to watch the last 2 minutes of this movie over and over again, just to listen to Optimus Prime's final monologue leading up to What I've Done by Linkin Park. As for the negatives, I think for the most part, it's a little bit much. They all are, and it's not as bad as the later films, like I've said, but narratively, I felt like it was a little bit too crowded in its story. There's a lot happening if you think about it, because there's far too much exposition than what I feel is necessary for a first movie. They're always explaining something else, and obviously the movie is 2.5 hours long, so could they have made it shorter by keeping things a little bit more contained and tell a simpler story? Most likely, yes. Another issue is Megan Fox. I'm sorry. She's not horrible in the movie, and she does sometimes play an important role into what's going on, but I want to say that she was probably hired for sex appeal. But thankfully, regardless on her ability to act, she does have some pretty good chemistry with Shia LaBeouf, and because of that, I think her role in this series is probably her best in her career, so it's a bit of a bittersweet feeling for me. But yeah, I mean, there's just too much story, too much action at times, too many characters. I mean, look, you got Shia, Megan Fox, the Autobots, the Decepticons, the political people in the background, the hackers, the Sector 7 people, Sam's parents. It's a bit too much, okay? Let's go ahead and break down my final score from a technical level. You gotta admit that this movie is beautiful. Great visuals, great action, attractive cast. It sounds great with that incredible soundtrack. I think the cinematography is crisp. The casting works better than I think it does in future films. It's a solid film despite its flaws in the narrative, which I have said before, it's a little bit convoluted and messy. Overall, though, this score is a solid 88%. As for my bias score, I usually have a pretty good time watching this movie despite its flaws, and I definitely consider it to be a film that is rewatchable, and I'd also recommend it to people who haven't seen it or any of the other Transformers films. I mean, it might be the only movie in the franchise that I do recommend, but if you have to watch only one Transformers film, watch this one, obviously. My bias score is 92%. So when we average out the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 90%. 90 out of 100 possible stars, or an A-letter grade. Guys, let me know your thoughts on the Transformers series in the comments section down below. Which one is your favorite? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with the next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies. We just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1.